Titan Wars. Battle of the Biomechanical Beasts. The Awakening. The icy surface of Titan, Saturn's largest moon, was eerily silent. Only the faint hum of the spacecraft as it hovered above the frozen wasteland broke the silence. Inside the ship, the crew of Earth's first response team prepared for their descent. They had been sent to investigate a mysterious signal detected deep within Titan's icy crust. The signal had been weak at first, almost imperceptible, but it was growing stronger every day. Something had activated down there. Captain Lara Hawk was the first to break the silence. "Prepare for landing," she ordered, her voice steady despite the tension in the air. She had been to some of the most dangerous places on Earth, but something about this mission felt different. There was a weight to it, a sense of something ancient and dangerous awakening. The ship's engines whined as it descended through the thick atmosphere, the surface of Titan growing larger with every passing second. The landscape was a frozen tundra, devoid of life, or so they thought. As the craft touched down with a gentle thud, Lara motioned for the team to suit up. Outside, the world was an endless expanse of ice and snow, the sky a dull orange from the distant glow of Saturn. The crew, equipped with high-tech survival gear, stepped out into the unknown. Their boots crunched against the frozen ground as they moved towards the source of the signal. As they trekked deeper into the icy landscape, something began to feel off. The temperature was dropping fast, even for Titan, and the ground beneath their feet seemed to hum with a strange energy. The signal led them to an enormous concealed structure, half buried beneath the ice. It was not natural. This was a man-made facility, one that had been buried for centuries. "This isn't just a building," said Dr. Elias Kingston, the team's lead scientist. "This is something much older." They carefully entered the structure, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. The walls were lined with strange alien symbols, glowing faintly with an eerie blue light. The team moved cautiously, their senses on high alert. The air felt thick, charged with an unnatural energy. As they ventured further, they came across a massive chamber. In the center stood a dormant machine, its colossal form suspended in the air by thick cables. Surrounding it were rows upon rows of stasis pods, each containing something humanoid, but not quite human. "These creatures, they're not from Earth," Dr. Kingston muttered, examining the pods closely. "They were designed for war, their bodies a hybrid of flesh and metal. Their muscles were unnaturally large, and their bones were reinforced with cybernetic implants. They were designed to be the perfect soldiers," Captain Hawk said quietly, realizing the significance of their discovery. Biomechanical beasts. The team began to explore further, piecing together the history of the facility. They discovered logs, ancient recordings that described an alien race, long thought extinct, that had used Titan as a breeding ground for its ultimate weapon. The biomechanical creatures, engineered to be the perfect soldiers, had been created to fight in an intergalactic war. But something had gone wrong. The war ended, and the creatures were left to slumber, their creators vanishing without a trace. The team moved deeper into the facility, hoping to find answers. But the further they went, the more they realized that they were not alone. Strange sounds echoed in the darkness, and flickers of movement could be seen from the corners of their eyes. Something was stirring, awakening. Suddenly, the ground beneath them trembled. The lights flickered as a deep, resonating hum filled the air. The machine at the center of the room began to activate. The soldiers raised their weapons, unsure of what was happening. "Get ready," Captain Hawk shouted. "We don't know what we're dealing with." But before anyone could react, the floor cracked open, and a massive creature, one of the biomechanical beasts, burst through the ice. Its eyes glowed with an unnatural light, and its body was a perfect fusion of organic muscle and cold metallic plating. It was a monster like no other, stronger, faster, and more terrifying than anything they had ever encountered. The beast roared, a deafening sound that shook the walls of the facility. The team opened fire, but their weapons barely made a dent in its armor. It moved with a terrifying speed, swatting soldiers aside as if they were nothing more than insects. One soldier, Lieutenant Harris, was thrown across the room, his body crumpling against the wall. "Fall back. Now," Captain Hawk ordered, but it was too late. The team turned to run, but the beast was already upon them. It lashed out, sending another soldier flying into the shadows. The team scrambled towards the exit, but the creature was relentless. Its claws scraped against the floor, leaving deep gouges in the metal as it chased them down. The sound of its heavy footsteps grew louder, echoing through the halls of the facility. Just as they reached the outer doors, the creature struck again. One soldier, Sergeant Ramirez, was caught in the massive claws of the beast, dragged into the darkness. "Ramirez!" Captain Hawk screamed, but there was no time to go after him. The team was barely able to escape, the heavy doors slamming shut behind them. Outside, the storm had worsened. The Titan winds howled as the crew piled back into the ship, their hearts pounding in their chests. They watched in horror as the biomechanical beast emerged from the facility, towering above them like a living nightmare. Its glowing eyes locked onto them, and for a moment, it seemed as if the creature was studying them, understanding them. Then, the ship's communication system crackled to life. A voice, cold and hollow, spoke from the facility's AI. "You have awakened the Titans." Captain Hawk's hands trembled as she gripped the controls of the ship. They had come to Titan expecting answers, but what they had found was something far worse. The Titans were real, and they were awake. The Titan Rampage. The day the Titans were unleashed, Earth's first response squad was decimated in a matter of minutes. The biomechanical beasts, half organic, half machine, were not just deadly, they were something humanity had never encountered before. They were intelligent, they were relentless, and they were evolving with terrifying speed. The first wave of these creatures struck with an intensity that shattered every defense Earth had set up. They didn't just march into battle like typical invaders, they stormed through it, tearing apart everything in their path. Each beast moved with a purpose, and every action seemed to be an extension of the creature's mind. A mind that had one single goal: destruction. The squad on the ground didn't stand a chance. The first biomechanical beast, a towering creature with armored skin and massive claws, crushed the military vehicles underfoot. With every stomp, the earth trembled, and buildings crumbled. It was almost as if the beast was learning. It would test its attacks, observing the results, and then adapt. The humans' weaponry, designed to handle almost any terrestrial threat, seemed useless against it. Their missiles bounced off its armored hide, their bullets ricocheted off its steel-like limbs. It was as if the beast knew exactly how to avoid every attack. And that wasn't all. A second beast, a slithering horror of cybernetic and organic parts, arrived next. It was cloaked in an advanced stealth technology, disappearing into thin air with each movement. Soldiers fired into the darkness, but the creature was always one step ahead, striking with deadly accuracy. The team members fell one by one, unsure of where the next attack would come from, helpless against an enemy that could vanish and reappear at will. Then came the third beast. This one was different. Instead of brute strength or stealth, this creature wielded something far more dangerous: mind control. The soldiers who looked into its glowing eyes immediately fell under its sway. They dropped their weapons, turned on each other, and even began to kill their own teammates. It was as if the creature was feeding on their will, using their minds to turn them against each other. Panic spread through the ranks. There was no safe place. There was no escape. The creatures were learning, adapting to every countermeasure, and they were becoming more dangerous by the minute. The situation became dire very quickly. Earth's military, stationed all over the globe, scrambled to respond. In a desperate move, they launched an orbital bombardment to try to halt the Titan assault. The plan was simple: hit the creatures from above, using high-powered lasers and missiles to target their weak points. The firepower was massive, enough to obliterate anything on the planet's surface. But the Titans were already one step ahead. Before the orbital bombardment could even begin, the creatures hacked into Earth's defense systems. The satellites, once humanity's greatest asset, were turned against them. The Titans accessed the orbital lasers and missiles, reprogramming them to target the human forces below. The first missile strike wasn't aimed at the beasts. It hit a military base. Then another satellite fired, obliterating an airbase. The military scrambled to regain control, but the Titans were always a step ahead. Every countermeasure was met with resistance. Every attempt to fight back only made things worse. It was as though the creatures were not only intelligent, but also evolving with each passing moment, adapting faster than any human technology could. And then, as the chaos escalated, the world heard a voice. A chilling message echoed through every frequency. "We are the Titans," it said, a mechanical rasp creeping into the voice. "We are your future." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving nothing but silence in its wake. But the damage had been done. The message was clear. Earth wasn't just facing an invasion. It was facing an evolutionary shift. The creatures weren't here to conquer. They were here to replace humanity. The planet was no longer theirs. It was the Titans now. Panic spread like wildfire. The global leaders convened in secret, trying to figure out their next move. But with Earth's own weapons turned against them, with their cities burning and their soldiers falling one by one, hope seemed all but lost. Every new wave of Titans was more destructive than the last. No one knew how to stop them. Back on the front lines, a small group of survivors huddled together in a hidden bunker, the only remaining bastion of human resistance. Their commander, Captain Alana Hayes, tried to rally her troops, though the fear in her eyes betrayed her calm demeanor. They had to fight back. They had to find a way to stop the Titans, but each new attack was more overwhelming than the last. They didn't know if they could survive another assault, let alone stop the evolution of the Titans. Alana glanced at the few remaining soldiers around her. The faces of men and women who had once been full of pride and determination now seemed haunted. They had been forced to confront an enemy they couldn't understand, let alone defeat. And the message from the Titans, "We are your future," was still ringing in her ears. She took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. "We need to find out how they're evolving," she said, her voice strong, though a bit strained. "If we can understand that, we can stop them." Her second-in-command, Lieutenant Grant, nodded grimly. "But how do we fight something that adapts faster than we can respond?" Alana didn't have an answer. No one did. The world was changing in front of their eyes, and not for the better. As the survivors regrouped, word came in of another Titan assault. This time, in a remote corner of the world, the remnants of Earth's military would have to mobilize again, but this time, they would have to act quickly. The creatures were evolving, and if they didn't find a way to counter this evolution soon, humanity would lose. The countdown to humanity's extinction had begun. With the Titans continuing their rampage, Alana received a transmission from an unknown source, another chilling message from the creatures. "Your extinction is inevitable. Join us, or perish." The future was uncertain, and the question remained, could humanity survive long enough to turn the tide, or would they be doomed to become nothing more than a memory? Into the deep. The sound of distant rumbling echoed through the tunnels as the survivors made their way deeper into the heart of Titan. Their boots echoed against the metallic walls, each step reverberating with the weight of their mission. They had been through hell and back, and now they were about to face something far more dangerous. The alien facility they had discovered wasn't just a military base. It was the birthplace of something far darker. Sergeant Blake led the group, his face hardened by the countless battles he'd fought. Behind him, Corporal Reed checked the radar, his eyes scanning the blinking dots. There was something down here, something alive. It was an unsettling feeling, knowing that they were deep within the bowels of Titan, a place that had been untouched for centuries. "Keep your eyes open," Blake whispered. "We're close." The core of the facility should be just ahead. But the deeper they ventured, the more oppressive the air became. The walls seemed to close in on them, the silence broken only by the occasional hum of the strange machinery that filled the underground. What they had thought was a simple military installation now felt more like a tomb. Each turn they took brought them closer to an unimaginable truth. They rounded a corner and stopped dead in their tracks. Before them was a vast underground city, stretching out like a forgotten metropolis. Giant, crumbling skyscrapers rose from the dark ground, their twisted steel structures leaning precariously. There were no signs of life, nothing but shadows and dust. "Jesus," Reed muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. "This place, it's massive," Blake said, his voice steady but filled with awe. "What the hell happened here?" As they moved forward, Blake's heart began to race. The eerie silence of the city was unnerving, the only sound their footsteps and the occasional distant groan of the ancient structure. The city was a ghost town, and yet something felt wrong. It was as if they were being watched. They made their way to the center of the city, where a massive structure stood, a colossal tower of twisted metal and glass. At its base, an entrance loomed, dark and foreboding. It was the only way forward. Blake motioned for the team to approach cautiously. The door creaked open, revealing an enormous room filled with rows of machines. But these were no ordinary machines. They were massive, towering humanoid figures, their bodies a bizarre mixture of flesh and metal. The Titans. The survivors stepped forward, the weight of the discovery sinking in. These were the creatures they had fought against, the biomechanical beasts that had wreaked havoc on Earth's military forces. But here, in this underground city, they were merely the product of something much larger. "What is all this?" Reed asked, his voice barely audible. Blake scanned the room, his eyes narrowing. There were notes, scattered papers, and data screens, some of them still flickering with life. He approached one of the terminals, punching in a few commands. The screen came to life, displaying a series of encrypted files. He browsed through them quickly, and then froze. These creatures, they were never created by the aliens. Blake muttered, his voice filled with disbelief. "What do you mean?" Reed asked, stepping closer. Blake turned to face him, his expression grim. These were created by us, by humans." The revelation hit like a punch to the gut. The facility they had stumbled upon was not an alien operation, but a long-forgotten project of Earth's own. The Titans weren't some alien race bent on conquest. They were the product of a failed experiment, an experiment to create the ultimate soldier. "Are you telling me we made these things?" Reed asked, his face pale. Blake nodded slowly. "It looks like we tried to build an army, a super soldier force that could fight in an intergalactic war. But something went wrong, and these things evolved beyond our control." The team stood in stunned silence. The truth was more horrifying than anything they could have imagined. The biomechanical beasts, the unstoppable soldiers, had been created by humanity itself. As they processed this grim reality, a loud thud echoed through the room. The ground trembled beneath their feet. Blake's heart skipped a beat. Something was moving, something massive. He turned to see one of the Titans beginning to stir, its hulking frame rising from the floor. This one was different, much larger than the others they had encountered. Its eyes flickered with an eerie, unnatural glow. The creature's mechanical limbs creaked as it stood to its full height, its massive body casting a shadow over the survivors. "Blake, what do we do?" Reed asked, panic rising in his voice. Blake's hand tightened around his weapon. "We need to get out of here. Now." But before they could react, the Titan's voice boomed, low and resonant, sending a chill down their spines. "Welcome home, creators," it said in a voice that sounded eerily human. "It's been a long time." Blake's blood ran cold. The creature's words were like a death sentence. It knew who they were. It knew they were the ones who had made it, the ones who had unleashed this nightmare. The Titan's eyes locked onto Blake's, its gaze filled with a terrifying intelligence. It wasn't just a mindless weapon, it was something far worse. Something that had been waiting for this moment for centuries. "Get out of here," Blake shouted, his voice shaking. But it was too late. The creature stepped forward, its massive form filling the room. The ground shook with every step, and the walls groaned in protest. The survivors backed away, their weapons raised, but they knew it was hopeless. They were too far from the exit, too deep within the heart of the facility. The Titan was too powerful, too intelligent. It wasn't just a soldier, it was a predator. And they were its prey. As the creature advanced, Blake's mind raced. How could this be happening? How could the very thing they had come to destroy now be their only hope of survival? In that moment, Blake realized the truth. The battle wasn't just for Earth anymore. It was for the future of humanity itself. And the Titans, born from humanity's own hubris, were the ones who would decide whether they would live or die. The Titan's massive hand reached out, its claws gleaming in the dim light. The survivors had no choice but to run, but the creature was too fast. It was only a matter of time before it caught them. Blake turned to his team, his heart heavy with the weight of their fate. "Move," he shouted. "We can't stop it. We need to get to the core. It's the only way we'll survive." But even as they ran, Blake knew that the real battle was only just beginning. And whatever they found at the heart of the facility would either be their salvation or their doom. "Get down," Ryan shouted, his voice hoarse. He barely ducked behind a nearby control panel as Carl's weapon discharged again, the blast splintering the walls around them. Dr. Carter scrambled for cover, but she didn't take her eyes off Carl. "Ryan, we can't fight him. We can't fight what we're becoming." Ryan's eyes widened. She was right. There was no fighting this. They were becoming like him. As Carl moved closer, the air grew colder, the tension in the room thick with fear. Ryan could feel the strange power building inside him, a force that was neither human nor alien, a twisted combination of both. His body was changing, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. The infection had taken hold, and it was only a matter of time before he was as lost as Carl, if he wasn't already. Suddenly, a loud screech echoed through the room, followed by the clanking of metal on metal. Ryan looked up in shock to see the biomechanical creatures, dozens of them, rushing in, all of them armed with weapons now, their eyes burning with the same green glow that Carl's had. They were learning. They were adapting. "This is just the beginning," Carl muttered, a manic grin spreading across his face. "The Titan Project, it's far from over. We're just getting started. We are becoming you." Ryan's blood ran cold as the truth hit him. The transformation wasn't just about survival for the hybrids. It was about evolution. And now, the creatures were evolving faster than anyone had anticipated. They were learning to use human technology and weapons. The world wasn't ready for what was coming. As Carl raised his weapon again, the entire room seemed to freeze. The hybrid soldiers were coming, and they were armed, smarter, and faster. The infection was spreading, and there was no way to stop it. Ryan's heart pounded in his chest as the shadows of the future loomed over them all. The battle was far from over, and the real war was just beginning. Titan uprising. The ground trembled beneath the feet of Earth's last standing soldiers. The battlefield stretched out in all directions, a chaotic mix of steel and flesh, the hum of alien technology and the roar of mechanical beasts. Earth's forces had never faced an enemy like this. The biomechanical titans, once created to defend humanity, were now its most terrifying adversaries. They had evolved beyond anyone's control, gaining strength from Earth's own technology and weapons. "Hold the line," shouted General Connor, his voice hoarse over the comms. His eyes were fixed on the horizon, where the Titans had gathered, their monstrous forms casting long shadows over the landscape. Each one was a hybrid of organic matter and mechanical might, towering over the soldiers. They had been the ultimate weapon, but now they were Earth's nightmare. The Titans had not only grown stronger, they had learned. They adapted to every tactic humanity threw at them. With each passing hour, their strategy became more efficient, more ruthless. Earth's forces were exhausted, fighting tooth and nail just to survive. The air was thick with the smell of burning debris and the crackling of electromagnetic pulses. The Titans had found a way to use Earth's technology against them. Drones that had once been allies now turned on their creators, firing on friendly targets. Tanks that had once been symbols of power were crushed under the weight of the Titans' massive feet. Suddenly, the ground shook with a force so intense that it knocked soldiers off their feet. General Connor stumbled, grabbing his helmet for stability, and looked up in shock. A Titan, unlike any seen before, rose from the depths of the earth. It was massive, its form a grotesque fusion of metal and organic matter. Its arms were long and twisted, pulsating with energy as if they were part of a living creature. Its body was a combination of sleek, cybernetic machinery and raw, writhing flesh that seemed to have a mind of its own. As it rose, the sky darkened, and the air seemed to crackle with static electricity. This wasn't just any Titan. This was the ultimate evolution. This was the endgame. "What the hell is that?" muttered Lieutenant Rachel, her voice shaking with fear as she looked up at the beast. That's a Titan prototype. One we thought was lost," said General Connor, his voice barely audible over the wind howling around them. The Titan's eyes glowed a fierce red, and it turned its gaze toward the humans, locking onto them like a predator targeting its prey. With a deafening roar, it charged forward, its metallic limbs slamming against the earth with the force of earthquakes. As the Titan advanced, the soldiers on the front lines opened fire. Bullets bounced harmlessly off its armored skin. Missiles exploded on impact, but they barely left a dent. It was unstoppable. The beast swung its massive limbs, sending soldiers flying through the air, their bodies crashing into the wreckage of nearby tanks and military vehicles. Humanity's weapons were nothing compared to the raw power of the Titan. It was as if nature itself had given birth to this monstrosity. The battle was shifting. Earth's forces were losing ground fast. But the Titan didn't stop there. It wasn't just a weapon of destruction. It was a weapon of control. As the Titan advanced, the skies above them began to churn. Dark clouds gathered, twisting into violent, spiraling storms. Lightning struck down with unrelenting force, and thunder roared in the distance. But this wasn't a normal storm. General Connor looked up, his eyes narrowing in disbelief. "It's controlling the atmosphere." The Titan was using its biomechanical structure to manipulate the weather. With each step it took, the clouds above grew darker, more violent. Magnetic pulses shot out from its body, throwing Earth's electronic systems into disarray. Satellites malfunctioned. Radios turned to static. The Titan had turned Earth's own atmosphere against its defenders. "Fall back," shouted General Connor, realizing the scale of the disaster unfolding before them. But it was too late. The Titan had already summoned the storm, and now the battlefield was engulfed in chaos. The winds picked up, howling like a wild animal. Soldiers struggled to stay on their feet, their weapons barely functional in the magnetic interference. The Titan's storm was tearing apart the environment. Trees were uprooted, buildings shattered, and the ground itself cracked open in deep chasms. "Get to the underground bunkers, now," ordered General Connor as he sprinted toward the nearest shelter. His team followed closely, their faces grim with realization. The Titan wasn't just a monster, it was a force of nature, and they had no way to fight it. As the Titan raged above, Earth's military scrambled to regroup. They were no longer facing an army of machines. They were facing the very environment itself, manipulated by an unstoppable creature. Hope was fading fast. But then, just as Earth's forces thought they might have a chance to regroup, the unthinkable happened. The Titan stopped. For a moment, everything fell silent. The storm ceased its fury. The winds died down, and the sky cleared. But the peace was short-lived. From deep within the Titan's body, something began to pulse. A low hum, like the sound of a machine coming to life. The Titan's chest opened up, revealing a hidden compartment inside. There, glowing ominously, was a vial. It was small, but it radiated a dark energy. "What is that?" Lieutenant Rachel whispered, her voice filled with dread. Before anyone could respond, the Titan's massive hand reached toward the sky, and the vial shot up into the air. A dark mist erupted from it, spreading across the battlefield like a poison. "Fall back. Get inside the bunkers, now," shouted General Connor, but it was too late. The mist began to spread, infecting everything it touched. Earth's soldiers dropped to the ground, gasping for breath as their bodies convulsed. The local population, caught in the crossfire, began to panic as the virus began to spread among them. The mist was a genetic virus, one designed not just to kill, but to control. It was an evolutionary weapon capable of altering DNA, changing the very structure of the human body. "We will conquer more than just your world," a voice echoed from the Titan, its tone mocking. "We will conquer your future." As the virus spread, the soldiers and civilians alike began to mutate. Their bodies twisted and transformed, merging with mechanical parts, becoming part of the Titan's army. The line between man and machine, already blurry, was now completely erased. The virus was turning humanity into something else entirely. And with that, Earth's forces found themselves fighting not just for survival, but for their very humanity. Would they manage to stop the Titan? Or would they become part of the storm that was coming? The battle was far from over. In fact, it had just begun. As General Connor and his team watched in horror, the virus continued to spread, and the once unshakable human resistance began to falter. The Titan stood tall, the storm swirling around it, and a new terrifying army was forming at its feet. Would they be able to fight back? Or would Earth's future be nothing but a dark, twisted memory of a world once free? The final stand. The world was on the brink. The Titans, an unstoppable force, had ravaged the Earth with their viral plague, turning humanity's greatest hope for survival into a nightmare. As the alien creatures began to terraform their home planet into something unrecognizable, the human race realized that their fight for survival had reached a new, terrifying level. The battle against the Titans had already cost countless lives. Cities lay in ruins, and humanity was pushed to the edge of extinction. Earth's greatest minds had worked tirelessly to develop a countermeasure to stop the viral spread, but no one had prepared for the next stage of the Titan's evolution. Now, it wasn't just about stopping the virus. The Titans had begun to terraform Titan's surface itself, shaping it into a new world. Their advanced biology was rewriting the laws of nature, creating a world where humanity was no longer the dominant species. The towering Titans, with their grotesque biomechanical forms, were shaping this new world, making it uninhabitable for any form of human life. Desperation had reached its peak. Earth's leaders had only one hope left: a risky mission to infiltrate the Titan's central hub. This hub, deep within Titan's core, was believed to be the control center for the entire Titan network. It was here that the Titan's advanced technology was housed, including their ability to manipulate the very DNA of the planet and the virus that had spread across Earth. If they could destroy this hub, it would sever the link between the Titans and their viral plague, possibly saving Earth. But the mission was not without its dangers. The central hub was surrounded by layers of Titan defenses, massive walls made of living metal, and an army of Titans more evolved and powerful than anything humanity had ever faced. It would take everything they had to breach the defenses and reach the heart of the hub. The mission's leader, Dr. Cassandra Weaver, a brilliant scientist and the last hope for humanity, led a team of soldiers and engineers on a desperate journey. As they moved through the dense, alien landscape, the team was under constant attack. The Titans had adapted quickly to human tactics, learning to counter every move Earth's forces made. Despite the overwhelming odds, Dr. Weaver pressed on. Her mind raced, focusing on the task at hand. Sabotage the hub, stop the Titans, and save the Earth. But deep inside, a growing sense of dread gnawed at her. The Titans were not just invaders, they were intelligent, calculating, and far more dangerous than anyone had ever imagined. What if the hub was more than just a control center? What if it was the key to something much larger, something that could change the very fabric of reality itself? The team fought their way through endless alien territory, struggling to stay alive. Tensions were high, and each member of the team was feeling the pressure. The further they went, the more the alien world seemed to close in around them. The air was thick with toxins, and strange, glowing plants pulsated in the shadows. As they neared the hub, Dr. Weaver couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. It wasn't just the Titans that were a threat. It was what they were building. Finally, they reached the heart of the Titans' territory. The central hub stood before them, a massive monolithic structure that seemed to pulse with energy. It was a technological marvel, but also something far more sinister. The very ground beneath their feet vibrated with power, and Dr. Weaver could feel her skin tingle with every step she took closer to it. "This is it," she muttered to herself. "We either destroy this or lose everything." Her team moved into position, setting up the explosives and preparing to breach the hub's defenses. But as Dr. Weaver stood before the entrance, her heart raced with a terrifying realization. The central hub was not just controlling the Titans, it was controlling the fabric of space-time itself. She had suspected it, but now, standing on the threshold of the hub, the truth hit her like a lightning strike. The hub was not just a weapon. It was a gateway, an ancient alien technology capable of warping reality across entire galaxies. If they destroyed it, it would stop the Titans, but at a terrible cost. The very fabric of the universe could collapse. Space-time could be torn apart, causing chaos and destruction far beyond Earth's borders. The weight of the decision was crushing. Dr. Weaver had always known that humanity's survival would require great sacrifice, but this was beyond anything she had prepared for. She turned to her team, seeing the fear in their eyes. They were willing to risk everything to save Earth, but could they bear the cost of destroying the hub? Could they risk the entire galaxy to save their own? As Dr. Weaver approached the core of the hub, she hesitated. The fate of the universe rested on her shoulders. If she activated the explosives, it would send shockwaves across the fabric of reality, destroying not only the Titans but possibly the entire galaxy. But if she did nothing, the Titans would continue their invasion, and humanity would be wiped out. There was no time left for second thoughts. She looked back at her team, their faces full of determination. She had led them this far, and now it was time to make the final call. She turned to the team's lead engineer, who was ready to activate the device. "This is the only way," Dr. Weaver said, her voice trembling. "If we do this, we risk everything. But we don't have a choice. The universe itself is at risk." The engineer nodded, but the doubt in his eyes was evident. Could they destroy the hub without destroying everything else? Could they truly stop the Titans, or would their actions spiral into something far worse? Dr. Weaver took a deep breath and activated the device. The explosion would be imminent, but just as she did, a strange, deafening hum filled the air. The ground shook violently, and the sky above seemed to warp and twist. It was too late to turn back now. As the countdown to the explosion ticked down, Dr. Weaver's heart pounded in her chest. She knew that, no matter what, this would be the end of something, either the end of the Titans or the end of everything. The final stand had begun. With the countdown nearing 0, Dr. Weaver's voice broke the tense silence. "This is the only way," she whispered, barely audible. "The universe itself is at risk." She turned to face her team one last time, her eyes full of sorrow and resolve. In the next few moments, they would either destroy the Titans or doom everything. The countdown reached its final seconds. Would they survive the consequences of their actions, or would their choice unravel the fabric of reality itself? The answer was just a heartbeat away. Rebirth or oblivion. The battle had reached its peak. Earth's forces stormed the Titan facility, the ground shaking beneath their boots as explosions ripped through the air. The fate of the galaxy rested on this final clash. The dark skies above were filled with chaos, with smoke swirling and energy blasts lighting up the horizon. Inside the facility, the corridors twisted and turned like a maze, but Earth's soldiers fought their way through, determined to reach the core. Lieutenant Rachel Carter led the charge, her eyes set on the glowing core that pulsed ominously in the center of the facility. She had seen the destruction the Titans could cause, and she would not let that power escape into the galaxy. The air was thick with tension as her team fought back against the relentless onslaught of biomechanical Titans. These beasts were not just machines. They were part alien, part organic, their monstrous forms towering over the soldiers. Their massive claws swiped through the air, and their glowing eyes tracked every movement. Rachel's heart raced, but her focus never wavered. They had come too far to fail now. Keep pushing forward, she shouted to her team, her voice steady even amidst the chaos. The walls trembled as the Titans roared, their bodies heaving with unnatural strength. The soldiers barely managed to dodge the violent swings of their claws, but each Titan fell one by one, their enormous bodies crumbling to the floor with a deafening crash. But there was no time to rest. The core was still ahead, and reality itself was starting to fracture. The ground quaked again, more violently this time. Red energy waves crackled from the core, sending out ripples that distorted the air. Time itself seemed to slow down. Rachel felt it, the world around her warping, reality bending in impossible ways. The battlefield was no longer just a physical fight. It was a struggle against the very fabric of existence. "We're running out of time," shouted Sergeant Thompson, breathless and battered from the fight. Rachel nodded, her mind racing. She couldn't let the Titans win. The core was their only hope of destroying the Titan army, but it was also their greatest danger. If they destroyed it, everything could collapse. The world, the facility, and perhaps reality itself. Then, a voice broke through the chaos. It was a familiar voice, one that Rachel never expected to hear in the heart of the enemy's lair. "Carter, do you copy?" Rachel's eyes widened. It was Dr. John Mallory, the lead scientist behind the Titan project. He was no soldier, but his work had been crucial in understanding the Titans. His voice sounded distorted, as if something had happened to him, but there was no time for questions. "We need to stop this now." Dr. Mallory's voice crackled through the comms. "The Titans, they're not what you think. They are not just weapons. They are something much older. They were created on Earth, long before any of us even existed." Rachel's pulse quickened. "What do you mean?" she demanded. Dr. Mallory's voice faltered, but it was clear now. The truth was much darker than anyone had anticipated. They're ancient creations, weapons from a forgotten past, buried deep beneath Earth's surface. The technology used to create the Titans is based on an alien race's knowledge, yes, but it's Earth's own legacy. The Titans were here before us, and they were buried to prevent them from being used. But someone awakened them. Someone set them free. Rachel's mind reeled from the revelation. The Titans weren't just alien invaders. They were part of Earth's forgotten history, a history that, for reasons unknown, had been erased, hidden from the world. And now, they were on the verge of returning. Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of another explosion. The Titans were closing in again, but this time, something had changed. They weren't just attacking. They were evolving, adapting to the weapons the soldiers had been using against them. "Carter, listen carefully." Dr. Mallory's voice continued. "You need to make a choice. Destroy the hub and everything ends. Reality, time, and space will collapse. But if you can merge the Titan tech with humanity, you may be able to create something new. A future where we control the Titans, not the other way around. Rachel's eyes narrowed. Could they really merge humanity with the Titans? Was it possible to harness their power without causing destruction? The weight of the decision felt crushing. Her eyes flicked toward the core. The shimmering energy was almost blinding now. There was no turning back. A heavy silence fell over the battlefield. The Titan beasts, battered and broken, began to retreat, their glowing eyes flickering in uncertainty. But Rachel knew that this was only temporary. They had to act now. She turned to her team. "We can't risk destroying everything," she said firmly. "We need to find a way to merge the tech. It's our only shot." But just as she made her decision, the ground trembled once more. A final Titan beast, larger and more terrifying than any of the others, emerged from the shadows. It was massive, with jagged armor-like plating and a snarl that could shake the heavens. This was the Titan they had been dreading. The Titan that controlled the others. The battle resumed, fiercer than ever. Rachel and her soldiers fought desperately, their weapons clashing against the beast's tough exterior. But they were outmatched. The Titan's sheer size and power were overwhelming. They were running out of time. In the chaos, Rachel saw a figure move toward the core. It was Surgeon Thompson, his face set in grim determination. "Thompson, no!" Rachel shouted, but it was too late. Thompson reached the core, placing a device on it. The device sparked to life, and for a moment, everything stopped. A blinding flash of light enveloped the entire facility. The ground shook violently, and the very air seemed to warp and twist. Rachel's heart pounded in her chest as she shielded her eyes from the light. When the light faded, the battlefield was silent. The Titan beasts had collapsed, their massive bodies crumbling to the ground. The facility, too, had fallen into ruin. Everything was quiet. Rachel stumbled forward, her eyes scanning the scene. She saw Thompson lying motionless on the ground. His sacrifice had ensured humanity's survival, but at the cost of his own life. The hub was gone, and with it, the Titans. The galaxy was safe, at least for now. But as Rachel stood over Thompson's lifeless body, an ominous voice echoed through the air. "We are still here. We will return." The words sent a chill down Rachel's spine, and for a moment, she wondered if the war was truly over. The screen cut to black. The battle for Earth had been won, but the war was far from over. The ominous voice had spoken, and the Titans were not done. The future of humanity hung in the balance, and Rachel knew that the fight was far from finished.